Thanks everybody for coming to this. It's great to be on such a diverse panel. I'm proud to be a raw dog.
It's nice to let you out for tonight.
A couple of years ago, Raw Dog Screaming Press published this book. It's a collection of my flash fiction called 100 Jolts. You see numerous flags here. I'm not going to read from that. If you want to know what's in this book, buy it. There's 100 stories in there. I'm going to read to you the last 6 or 7 flash fiction pieces I've read that are a page or 2 long. Does that sound too time consuming?
No.
Some of it's fiction, some of it's just weirdness. And the reason I'm doing this is this summer I taught a course in writing flash fiction at Seton Hall University. It's a joy to teach, but I found myself wanting to try all the different things I was asking the students to do, and these are the results, among other things. This first piece I want to read to you, quick intro, okay, and then I'll just move into it, is that I'm on a science fiction poetry association mailing list. And someone asked the question, what is horror anyway? Is it a genre, or is it just a trade of dark stories? And I felt compelled to answer because I'm one of the only horror writers in that group on that list. But people were pontificating, oh, horror is this, and they were doing all these like scholarly answers. So I felt like I had to say something, and I decided to write it as like a flash piece. And this is what I wrote. Horror is a church. Its blood-stained glass both colors and reflects its reader's worldview. It sacrifices many readers on the altar of repugnance. Some resurrect in order to pray and pray again. It appears on many territories, from the realms of dark fantasy to the alleyways of noir mysteries, from the cobwebbed stacks of literary libraries to the fecund boudoir of paranormal romances. It has no Bible. It has no church. It is a moving church. It is falling on top of it. This next piece of flash fiction I wrote because I challenged the class to write using an application that I know some of you in this room use called Write or Die. Heard of it? If not, go to the website, Write or Die, is it .com? And I used another app called the Brainstormer, which you can go to, I think it's brainstormer.com, maybe .org, who knows, which just throws 3 random words at you. And my 3 random words were remorse, dying, and puppet. So, it was uncanny.
What a coincidence.
So I tried to use Write or Die to use those words in a story real quick, writing, and I gave myself only 2 minutes or something like that. And the story I wrote is barely edited it. That accounts for the badness of the story. That's my excuse. It's called A Checkup for Mr. Bangles. Daddy, Mr. Bangles is dying. I dropped my magazine onto my lap and saw Cindy holding her doll up toward me. I smiled at the little cutie pie. Whatever gave you that idea, I said, taking her offering and propping the doll up on the arm of my recliner. It weighed about as much as Cindy did a few years ago when she was still in diapers, but hard. His plastic eyes looked askance, as they always did, a weird, directionless gaze that made him look as if he just committed some kind of petty toy box crime. Mr. Bangles looks as chipper as always. I don't think so, Daddy. Cindy leaned her sharp elbows on my knees and cupped her chin in her hands. Look at his face. He don't look good. I think he's going to die soon. Cindy's morbid thoughts troubled me. I thought she'd come to terms with the concept of mortality after our long talk about it when she discovered Kitty-Catta in a pile of fur and flies in the cellar last year, since she'd never spoken about it since. But clearly she was still processing the whole idea that nothing lasts forever. So I pretended to examine Mr. Bangles the way a doctor might, going through the motions of a checkup just to reassure her, and maybe invite her to talk it out. I pulled up his plastic eyelids with my thumbs, leaning forward to peer into his eyes. His eyes look good, I said as I looked into the glossy white ball bearings. No pink eye or impetigo, I added, knowing that Cindy had experienced a bout of pink eye just last year. A doubtful was all she said in reply, but I could tell she was enjoying this attention, having successfully gotten me to play with her. I twisted Mr. Bangles' head away from her till his chin was impossibly positioned over his neck. Now cough! I didn't grab between his legs, but the thought made me laugh a little. But I didn't want to break character, so I kept my lips closed and camouflaged it by doing a little ventriloquism, emulating a coughing sound in the back of my throat. Then I turned Mr. Bangles' melon-sized head to face Cindy directly. His eyes swiveled a little inside the sockets when I twisted his neck, and then they settled in a way that fell directly in the path of her gaze. I think Mr. Bangles here is just fine. Cindy twisted her cheek to lean on one palm. She smelled like watermelon candy as she puffed out her breath and rolled her eyes up at me. You didn't check his tummy. She blinked, her own wide and shiny eyes a little doll-like too. I pulled Mr. Bangles' checkered shirt up to reveal his plastic belly and found the presence of a plastic Audi button. It felt a little disturbing beneath my fingers as I pressed here and there, imitating how doctors had examined my own stomach before, feeling for God knows what during a routine checkup. He feels fine, I said to her, even though the rubbery plastic of his inhumanly thin flesh did not feel fine at all. It reminded me of the feeling of my wife's kangaroo-like belly when she was pregnant with Cindy 5 years ago. I even detected what might have been heat, and when I pressed hard I could hear air hissing out from somewhere else in his body, a slight farting whisper that I imagined very well might be coming out of his just anatomically correct enough to fool a 5-year-old's body. Is he okay? Cindy asked, breaking my concentration. She might have caught me frowning as I felt around the doll's stomach with growing concern. I think he might have a little tummy ache, I said, pressing more gently with my fingertips. Nothing a little cup of tea can't help. She had played tea time with Mr. Bangles almost daily. Maybe she'd run with my idea and go play with him and let me get back to my magazine. Check his heart, she burst out, letting go of her head and jumping away, walking over toward her children's tea table nearby. I placed a hand over the center of his chest, but hesitated. I was dead sure I was going to find a pulse. I looked into Mr. Bangles' eyes. They stared at the floor like a dead man's. Surely I was imagining things. I laid my hands upon his crumpled checkered shirt, guessing at the spot between where his dolly nipples might be located. At first I was relieved to discover nothing but a hard plastic torso, but as I pressed down I realized my fingers sunk a little. I adjusted my position. Hard edges. I lifted his shirt all the way up. A ragged hole was cut into the plastic, revealing a meaty interior. Cindy interrupted my disgust with a second horror. A teacup she positioned under my eyes. Can you check it? I think I broke it when it came out. This story, I'm not going to read. It was called Drainage. This one is called, I wasn't lying. Camera's on. This story is called Stage Jitters. I posted this to a website I asked the class to use called Drabbler.com, and it was actually awarded Drabble of the Week. A drabble is a story that is exactly 100 words. This is called Stage Jitters. Between gigs, he regretted his job. Sure, he was a celebrated artist, but the boredom of waiting for the next stage performance was tedious, and dark thoughts and criticism about his act always tormented him. But calls for encore performances kept coming, and nothing thrilled him more than donning his regalia and grasping the wooden neck of his rockin' axe, or the lever of the trapdoor, depending on the show. Peeking through the slits in the fabric of his black hood, the executioner relished the reactions of both adoring fans and the stiffest critics alike. He just wished it lasted longer.